What if I told you that you're carrying around a piece of paper worth $40,000 and you can't even use it to buy coffee? You spent 4 years earning it, went into massive debt for it, framed it on your wall, and the entire time, society convinced you it was the key to success. But here's the thing nobody wants to admit. For most people, that college degree was nothing more than the most expensive participation trophy in human history. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why the system is broken, how millions of people got trapped, and what the real numbers say about whether college is actually worth it anymore. And I'm warning you right now, if you're still paying off student loans, this is going to hurt, but you need to hear it. Let's start with the most insane statistic that nobody talks about. Right now, in 2025, 42.3 million Americans are drowning in student loan debt. Not thousands, not hundreds of thousands, 42 million people. That's more than the entire population of Canada. And collectively, they owe $1.81 trillion. Trillion. To put that in perspective, that's more than the entire economy of Russia. It's nearly triple what Americans owed in student debt back in 2007. In less than 20 years, we went from $540 billion to almost $2 trillion. That's not a trend. That's a crisis. And here's where it gets personal. The average borrower right now owes $39,375. That's a car. That's a down payment on a house. That's a year of salary for some people. And that number has doubled since 2008. Doubled. So if you graduated recently, you're carrying twice the burden your older siblings or parents did. But wait, because it gets worse. 3.6 million borrowers owe over $100,000. That's 1.1 million more people than just 7 years ago. Think about that. Over 1 million more people crossed into six-figure debt in less than a decade, and most of them aren't doctors or lawyers. They're regular people with master's degrees in fields that don't pay enough to justify that debt. Now I know what you're thinking. Okay, but college graduates still make more money, right? Doesn't that make it worth it? Hold on, because this is where the participation trophy comparison becomes painfully accurate. Yes, bachelor's degree holders earn more on average than people without degrees, about $8,000 more per year. But here's the catch. After you factor in loan payments, that advantage shrinks dramatically. Bachelor's degree holders spend 19% of their extra earnings just paying off loans. 19%. So you worked 4 years, went into debt, and nearly a fifth of your salary bump goes straight back to the bank. That's not an investment. That's a subscription service you can't cancel. But it's even more brutal for people with master's degrees. If you went to grad school thinking it would set you apart, hoping for a bigger salary, better opportunities, here's the truth. Master's degree holders spend 57% of their additional earnings on loan payments. 57%. More than half. You're working harder, you went deeper into debt, and you're keeping less than half of the financial benefit. At that point, you're not getting ahead. You're treading water while carrying a backpack full of bricks. And for associate degree holders, people who went the cheaper, faster route, they spend 9% of their extra earnings on loans. 9% compared to 19% for a bachelor's and 57% for a master's. So the more education you bought, the worse the return on investment became. That's not how it's supposed to work. That's not what they told you in high school, when guidance counselors pushed everyone toward 4-year universities. They sold you a dream, and you're paying for it in installments for the next 20 years. Let me tell you something that's going to make your blood boil. 30% of adults have taken out a student loan at some point. 30%. That means nearly 1 in 3 people you pass on the street bought into this system. And 40% of adults with any post-secondary education are currently in debt. Not were, are, right now, still paying, still struggling. Because here's what nobody explained. The debt doesn't just disappear when you graduate. Interest keeps piling up. Life gets expensive. And suddenly that manageable monthly payment becomes a financial anchor dragging you down for decades. And speaking of interest, let's talk about the dirty secret of student loans. Interest capitalization. This is when unpaid interest gets added to your principal balance, and then you start paying interest on the interest. It's compounding debt. 4 years after graduation, some borrowers owe more than they originally borrowed. Not because they didn't make payments, because the system is designed to keep you in debt longer. The longer you're in debt, the more interest you pay, the more profit the lenders make. It's not education financing. It's a debt trap with a college logo stamped on it. Now let's talk about who this hits the hardest. Because the system isn't just broken, it's discriminatory. 4 years after graduation, Black or African American borrowers owe $25,000 more than white borrowers for the exact same bachelor's degree. $25,000 more. And get this, 48% of Black borrowers owe more than they initially borrowed 4 years out, compared to just 17% of white borrowers. Same degree, same system, radically different outcomes. That's not just unfair. That's systemic financial destruction targeting specific communities. But here's where the participation trophy analogy really lands. Remember participation trophies? Everyone gets one just for showing up. It doesn't matter if you won, if you tried hard, if you even cared. You participated, here's your trophy. College degrees have become exactly that. In 2025, degrees are handed out to anyone who can get a loan and sit through 4 years of classes. The standards dropped, the rigor disappeared, and now everyone has a degree, which means the degree itself is worth less. It's credential inflation. When everyone has a bachelor's degree, having one doesn't make you special anymore. It just means you're not eliminated from consideration. You paid $40,000 to not be disqualified. That's not achievement. That's a cover charge. And the colleges know this. They absolutely know this. But they don't care because they're not the ones taking the risk. You are. Federal student loans mean the school gets paid upfront no matter what happens to you after graduation. Whether you get a job, whether your degree has value, whether you can ever pay back the loans, the college already got their money. So what's their incentive to keep costs down? What's their incentive to make sure programs actually lead to employment? There isn't one. The system rewards them for enrollment, not outcomes. The system rewards them for enrollment, not outcomes. The system rewards them for enrollment, not outcomes. They're selling participation trophies at premium prices, and the government is footing the bill with your future income. Let's look at the delinquency rates because this is where you see the real damage. 11.3% of federal student loans were delinquent in the second quarter of 2025. That's over 1 in 10 borrowers either behind on payments or in default. And 20% of borrowers reported being behind or in collections in 2024, 1 in 5. These aren't people who didn't try. These aren't lazy deadbeats. These are people who played by the rules, got the degree, and discovered the math doesn't work. The salary doesn't cover the debt. The job market isn't what they were promised, and now they're trapped. And here's the kicker. The people who are over 50 years old, 20% of all federal student loan borrowers are over 50. 20%. These aren't kids fresh out of college. These are people in their 50s and 60s still paying off degrees they earned decades ago. Some of them are paying off loans for their children's education. 52% of federal borrowers are over 35. This isn't a young person's problem anymore. This is a generational financial curse. Now let me hit you with some context because it's important to understand how we got here. Back in 2007, total student debt in America was $540 billion. By 2025, it nearly tripled. Tripled in 18 years. What changed? Did education suddenly become 3 times better? Did degrees become 3 times more valuable? No. Costs exploded. Tuition skyrocketed, and the federal government kept expanding loan access, making it easier to borrow more money. For education that wasn't getting better, just more expensive. The 2008 recession turbocharged this. When the economy collapsed, millions of people went back to school thinking a degree would protect them, would make them more employable. And colleges saw an opportunity. They raised tuition. They expanded enrollment. They built luxury dorms and climbing walls and lazy rivers. Not better education, better amenities, because they were competing for students flush with loan money. It's like raising prices when you know someone else is paying the bill, and the bill came due for the students, not the schools. Then COVID hit, and the government paused loan payments. For over 3 years, borrowers didn't have to pay. Interest didn't accrue. It felt like relief. But it was just a delay. And when payments restarted, delinquencies and defaults shot up. Because nothing fundamentally changed. The debt was still there. The jobs still didn't pay enough. And millions of people went from temporary relief right back into financial crisis. But here's the part that's going to make you furious. Graduate students can borrow virtually unlimited amounts. There's no cap for grad school loans. Undergrad loans are limited, but graduate students can take out as much as they need to cover the full cost of attendance. And schools know this. So what do you think happened? Graduate programs got more expensive. Way more expensive, because why charge $30,000 when students can borrow $60? Why stop at $60 when they can borrow $100? The system creates perverse incentives. Schools are rewarded for raising prices, and students are punished with unpayable debt. Now, let's talk about the so-called solution: income-driven repayment plans. The government offers programs where your monthly payment is based on your income, and after 20 or 25 years, the remaining balance is forgiven. Sounds great, right? Except it's not forgiveness. It's extending the pain. You make lower payments for decades, but interest keeps accruing. And when the loan is finally forgiven, guess what? That forgiven amount is often considered taxable income. So after 25 years of payments, you get hit with a massive tax bill. You trade one debt for another. That's not relief. That's a shell game. And the people defending the system will tell you, college is still worth it on average, and technically, they're not wrong. On average, degree holders out-earn non-degree holders. But averages hide everything. If 9 people are drowning and 1 person is thriving, the average says everyone's doing fine. The reality is way more complicated. Some degrees have incredible returns: engineering, computer science, nursing. But huge numbers of degrees have negative returns, especially master's degrees in low-paying fields. You borrowed $80,000 for a degree that adds $15,000 to your annual salary. The math doesn't work. You're underwater for life. Let me give you a comparison that'll put this in perspective. The median student loan debt, not average, median, is between $20,000 and $25,000. That means half of borrowers owe less than that, but 28% owe less than $10,000. So why do we have a $1.8 trillion crisis? Because the top end is catastrophic. Millions of people owe 6 figures. The debt is concentrated among people who went to expensive schools, pursued advanced degrees, and now earn salaries that can't support the payments. They're the ones being crushed, and the system doesn't care, because the loans are backed by the government. The money is guaranteed. You can't discharge student loans in bankruptcy. You're stuck forever. Here's what really exposes the participation trophy nature of all this. In the past, a college degree signaled something. It meant achievement, rigor, selective admission. It meant you were smart, capable, committed. Employers valued it because it was rare and difficult to obtain. But now, everyone has one. 40% of jobs that require a degree don't actually need one. Employers ask for degrees because they can. Because the labor market is flooded with graduates, not because the job actually requires that education. You paid for a credential that's mostly decorative. It checks a box. It doesn't prove competence. It just shows you were willing to go into debt. And the worst part? Young people are catching on. Borrowing among 18 to 29-year-olds who attended college dropped from 55% in 2017 to 42% in 2024. Younger generations are looking at their older siblings, their parents, and saying, no thanks. They're choosing trade schools, apprenticeships, certificate programs, starting businesses, anything that doesn't require decades of debt. And honestly, they're right, because the return on investment for traditional college is collapsing. It worked for boomers, it's failing millennials, and it's going to destroy Gen Z if they don't wake up. Let me give you the alternative perspective, because I'm not here to say college is worthless for everyone. It's not. If you're becoming a doctor, engineer, nurse, software developer, the degree has clear, measurable value. The earnings justify the cost. But for huge numbers of people, it doesn't. If you're getting a degree in a field with low earning potential, if you're going to an expensive private school on loans, If you're pursuing graduate education in the humanities or social sciences, the math is brutal. You're not investing in your future. You're buying a very expensive piece of paper that might, maybe, possibly help you get an entry-level job. So what's the takeaway here? The system is broken. College used to be an investment in yourself. Now it's a gamble with borrowed money. You roll the dice, hope the job market cooperates, hope your field pays enough, hope you don't get sick or laid off, or have any major life disruption that makes payments impossible. And if the gamble fails, you're stuck for decades. With debt, you can't escape. This isn't about being anti-education. Education is valuable, knowledge is powerful. But the way we financialized education, turned it into a debt-fueled industry that prioritizes enrollment over outcomes, that's the problem. Colleges aren't training students for the real world. They're processing loan applications. And students are paying the price. Literally, 42 million people are trapped in this system right now. $1.8 trillion in debt. And the only people who benefited were the schools and the lenders. Not the students, not society, just the people who got paid up front while you're left holding the bag for the next 20 years. So if you're watching this and you're still in school, think very carefully about what you're buying. If you're already in debt, you're not alone, and it's not your fault. You were sold a lie. And if you're considering college, run the numbers. Look at the actual return on investment. Don't just assume a degree equals success, because for millions of people, it equaled debt, regret, and a participation trophies they can't afford to frame.